Alright, folks, I'm aware that those last two videos I just did were a lot shorter than the videos that I usually make. Usually, you know, this channel, when I do get a chance to record, I make very long videos, at least 25 to 30 minutes, sometimes even an hour long of me talking about different stuff and reacting to different content. Today, I'm going to react to the Q Shaman debating, what's his name? I forget his name. I know his name is Brian. And I was listening through this a little bit at work, and I got so angry at the nonsense that was being said. I said I wasn't gonna watch it anymore, and I had to come home and actually react to it like this, to actually talk over this nonsense this guy is saying.
Paul McKeskey, 11-year NBA veteran.
Okay. So I think, do I even want to even talk about this before like we even get started? Well, what we need to talk about here is esoteric fascism. Esoteric fascism is when you lead to fascist white supremacists supporting conclusions, when you go on off mysticism and conspiracy theories instead of actually talking about actual problems that affect people. So you will notice throughout this entire debate, this guy never makes any points about real actual change that helps working class people. He's not talking about higher wages. He's not talking about the actual billionaires and rich people that hurt and stomp down on poor people. He's not going to talk about people having better health insurance and health care, making sure that people can go to the hospital without becoming bankrupt. He's not going to talk about anything tangible that actually helps working class people. It's a bunch of mystic hippie nonsense. I remember listening to punk rock at first, and I was really confused. I was thinking like, because you know when you first get into alternative culture, you start thinking like hippies are like, yeah, no, how can I say like, you know, more progressive and actually against the system? Well, I do believe that there may be segments of left-wing hippies. I feel like with their sentiment and the generation that they come from, a lot of them are extremely susceptible to quote-unquote anti-government propaganda. By anti-government propaganda, I mean I don't like civil rights for minorities, so basically I'm anti-government now. You know, spirit of the Confederacy and all. And that's why I soon learned why in all those punk rock songs why they don't like hippies, but not to mention they smell bad. And viewer discretion is advised for this video because I feel as though I'm gonna probably make it 30 minutes. I'm glad Brian here has different time steps to talk about different things and stuff like that, so I'm gonna skip through it. And I think I just saw one on Black Lives Matter riot. So this guy claims to be a progressive for the people, but you're promoting white supremacist talking points about the Black Lives Matter movement. We'll see. And it's been long enough, it's been a couple of days, so I don't even remember everything that was said here. And I'm actually skip past the intro and I'm gonna go straight into it. 5 minutes.
Well, do you trust the government?
Do I always trust the government? No, but that doesn't mean I think the October 1 shooting was the government's fault. It was a crazy lunatic who lived 45 minutes from Vegas, who bought a bunch of guns. It's been proven that he was trying to come up with other areas of killing a bunch of innocent people. He shot himself in that room, and there's no evidence to support the fact that anybody else was involved besides him. That's why yeah, go ahead.
Hold on. Let me ask you this. Do you think that somehow miraculously one of the terrorists from 9/11, that their passport miraculously survived the tragic events of that day and just so happened to find its way onto the ground?
Okay, so that's a different topic. If you want to talk,
well, no, I'm just but the point I'm getting at, dude, and we can derail on this if you want, but I don't trust the government. I've seen cover up. Well, I've seen cover up after 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 cover up. And if you look into Operation
what Jake is doing right here, and like I'm gonna interrupt, Jake does what a lot of right-wingers do and right-wing conspiracy theories and fascists and even neo-Nazis do. They take legitimate times where people face persecution from the government or holes left in government logic when it came to certain situations, like the assassination of Martin Luther King, which will be mentioned in this, or people like Fred Hampton, the persecution of Angela Davis, or the prosecution of Angela Davis. Things that are tangibly bad towards people that actually want to help people to justify their conspiratorial distrust of the government. Jake Chansley here does not mistrust the government because he's against capitalism. He does not distrust the government because he cares a lot about queer people or immigrants. He does not distrust the government because he's speaking of actual material change for working class people. Likely, and with a lot of people like him, including Tim Pool and Asmongold, they are just racist white people who hate seeing the government protect the civil rights of workers and minorities. And then they loop around that and claim to say that they're anti-government, where they're not actually speaking of any tangible change to make lives better for other people. And when you actually start talking to any right winger of any variation, Nazi, Republican, conspiracy theorists, and it quickly unravels, and you're talking about nonsense like tax cuts and how innocent businessmen are, instead of the actual change that you brought up for working class people. So that's what's going to happen in this do not trust the government section. Like, do I not trust the government? I don't really trust the government like that. I trust the government to sometimes do the bare minimum it's supposed to do, like protect women and minorities and, you know, queer people from like terrorism and what have you, and being unalived. But I don't trust the government when they say Israel is innocent. I don't trust the government when they say Martin Luther King just said content of his character and didn't talk about anything else. I don't trust the government when they say Fred Hampton was a criminal. I don't trust the government when they say John F. Kennedy was assassinated for absolutely no reason and there was nothing else going on there. And again, I'm naming tangible times where the government has done horrible things to protect its interests, but the reason why, especially we can zoom in on while Fred Hampton, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King was unalive, especially and even people like Judith Butler were unalive, was not because they were generically against anything the government stood for. Anarchism does not mean lawlessness necessarily. What it means is that these people fought for actual substantial change for the working class people in this country, or even a guy that was unalive by the police down in Atlanta at Cop City. These people were unalive and persecuted the way that they are because they are fighting for actual change for all working people. They are actually standing against the class dynamic that we view as normal in this country. And that's what makes the difference between them and some white right-wing conspiracist dipshit who gets his rocks off holding back civil rights progress from minorities and workers. Like, point fucking blank.
Northwoods, which Kennedy said no to, okay, which is where the CIA wanted to target hotels in Florida and do a terrorist attack and blame Cuba so they could have an excuse to go and invade Cuba. If you
see, this is a legit grievance, and he's going to connect it to his own fucking nonsense. And I told you I was going to be cussing a lot in this video because I don't care. Because I hate when they do this. They love to take times where the government misbehaved, and then they be like, so the government did, engineered a fake terrorist attack and was going to blame it on Cuba. And you believe that Jan 6 happened? Like, no, these are two different things, two different political ideologies, and things that happen for two different reasons. America did those things because they are anti-communist. They're anti-leftist. America has done tons of horrible things to leftists and socialist revolutionaries all across the planet. But these type of people only speak about it in the context of defending their own political ideals, as Brian here rolls his eyes.
You look at that and you realize that there is a track record of government abuses. This goes back to my reasons for going not just on January 6th, but also on December 12th, when everything was actually peaceful. I expected more of the same on January 6th. Then you'll see why it is. And I didn't even get a chance to start delineating things like, like I said, the Russia hoax for 4 years they knew was a lie.
It's not a lie. People were actually arrested and tried and wanted by the FBI for interfering in the 2016 election. And ironically, they tried it in 2020, but it really didn't work. And in 2024, they succeeded in spreading Russian and right-wing disinformation in American political discourse, where it's actual documented people like Tim Pool and others. He's the only one, and Dave Rubin were actually hired by a shell company created by the Russian Federation to spread white supremacist propaganda to Americans to get Donald Trump elected. Elon Musk bought X, Twitter. My mistake on that, no homo. But he bought Twitter, and now Twitter started promoting even me, because I'm on Twitter. I'm looking at like the Transformers collectors. I'm looking at the political people that I do watch. And instead of seeing, I still see them, but I'm also seeing like Benny Johnson being promoted to me, End Wokeness being promoted to me, Cat Turd being promoted to me. I'm seeing all these horrible fucking people that promote hatred and biased views about the various political problems that we face in this country. So if you really want to go there about election interference and cheating pertaining to the Russian government or not, you can say that in they tried to cheat. They cheated all 3 times. And it was only the one time it didn't work. And then after the fact, all the corporations bowed the knee to Trump and allowed misinformation to be spread on their platforms. And not even just Twitter, even Facebook.
Then there's the COVID lockdown.
When you say Russia, okay, let's go to the Russia hoax. Do you not believe that Russia interfered in our 2016 elections? Because I'm trying to understand what you mean by Russia hoax.
Okay, if Russia wanted somebody to be president, they would have picked Hillary Clinton because of Uranium One and the fact that she was more than willing to cooperate with Russia and send Russia our nutrients, our minerals at.
And what's also funny about him saying that is that during the COVID pandemic, Donald Trump sent Putin COVID tests and COVID medications, I believe, or at least tests, instead of sending those out to working class Americans or sending them to at least people that worked in the U.S. government. So Donald Trump bias, perforated through the situation where he actually gave assistance to Russia. He's giving them assistance now. Now we're speaking of drawing down our military support for the Ukrainians. We're speaking of ending Ukrainian immigration into the United States. So this nonsense where he's saying that Hillary Clinton would have supported or defended the Russian government is fucking nonsense. While Hillary Clinton might be bad and criticizable in other ways, especially from a left-wing point of view, compliant to Russia and disloyal to the United States, she is not. So this is all bullshit.
A discount. The notion that Russia, it was
okay, because I don't want this video to be too long. I'm gonna move on to a different topic. The deep state, Capitol Police. Do you think Trump should be held responsible? What do I want to do? I love that YouTube has this feature. The deep state. So what the fuck is the deep state? So I'm gonna tell you something really quick and easy. In my political opinion, from James, the skate punk lefty extraordinaire, saying shit like the deep state is unnecessary, false bullshit that actually keeps working class people from collectively organizing against the people that's actually holding us back, seizing away our rights and the funds that we need to take care of ourselves. The people that are responsible for the U.S. government being the way that it is, whether you want to talk about Democrat and the worst of all, Republican corruption, is rich people. Rich people funding AIPAC, rich people lobbying, rich people paying off candidates to vote against policies that are actually hurt that harm or help working class Americans. Like, you remember Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin. Kristen Sinema took her dumb ass up there and she did the whole ass thumbs down. It's because these people are paid opposition a lot of the times by rich people interfering in U.S. politics. And that is the issue that we deal with. And don't get me wrong, rich people harm working class people in other ways. But if we were going to talk about corruption in the government and so-called draining the swamp, we will end what did they call it? Citizens United. We will end that shit. And we will have grassroots organized campaigns from candidates. We will have term limits on people in Congress and the Senate, maybe shorter terms and what have you. But, again, the issue is that as rich people have gained more and more power, thanks to deregulation and the neoliberalization of the economy, they interfere more and more into the U.S. government. And that's leading to a desperate situation where 95% of the politicians in Washington are paid off. And that's the problem. So let's see where they take it. Especially Jacob.
I will tell you, just listen, okay? JFK said in a speech, We are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasions, on subversions
and this is anti-Semitism, by the way. Like, a lot of the people, like, you know, people that work at the ADL, and a lot of you Zionists like to complain about, you know, anti-Semitism. You know, I'm just be point blank in this video. This is anti-Semitism. A secret cabal of people trying to uproot and invade the United States of America instead of talking about the actual rich people who are born American, rich people who are Americans, rich people who live in America, rich people who work in the American government. You literally have Elon Musk, a billionaire white supremacist, right next to the fascist U.S. president right now. And you're telling me that there's some deep state on the outside, or there's a subversive community of people that are trying to destroy the United States, like Jews or others? You're out of your fucking mind. Like on some real shit. Anybody that believes this shit, and that goes for the Hebrew Israelites, all the Yaqub bullshit, you know, whoever, you know, and that goes for the actual American white supremacists. If you think that the problem is a minority of people, an ethno-religious group existing, is what's subverting rights of working people in the United States of America, you're a fucking clown. And your political opinion should not be taken seriously by anybody, and they should be vehemently opposed by anybody who hears the nonsense bullshit that you're saying. And that just reminded me about, that's why I don't like the term the deep state, because people just basically, you know, they dog whistle anti-Semitism through everything. Now he's trying to use something, because John F. Kennedy might have been a piece of shit on other terms. Like, he could have been talking about communism, and you know, and I think communism is good, by the way. And you know, but you know, he had his say on that, and now we're using things that he said to apply it to his anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. This is fucking nonsense. That's why Brian keeps rolling his eyes.
Instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. It is a system which has conspired vast human and material resources to create a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, scientific, economic, and political operations.
Now he's just using big words to sound like he's really in there, and he knows the real conspiracy about what's destroying Western civilization, or what's harming America. He's just saying shit at this point. Like, this is all fucking, it's nonsense, bro.
And I don't get how anybody takes concealed, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No rumor is printed, no expenditure is questioned, and no secret is revealed. What JFK was talking about when he talked about this tightly knit, highly efficient machine, the machine that I believe had him assassinated in broad daylight on live television in front of the entire country, and then brushed it under the rug, that tightly knit, highly efficient machine is the same military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about. It is currently what we call the deep state. It is called the swamp.
Yeah, this is nonsense. Like, the military-industrial complex is beheaded by rich, and I'm 100% sure, mostly white men who have, in different ways and different levels of society that it'll take me 30 minutes to describe, have contorted the U.S. government to their whims, to the point where our social safety nets and public services have been broken down, and almost all of the United States of America's money is given to the fucking U.S. military. That's done on purpose by rich people taking advantage of America's situation after the Second World War, where instead of investing into our people, we have invested into only the military and only the police. That's the problem in America. That's the problem with the military-industrial complex, dude. Like, it's not this bullshit where, like, I don't even know what the fuck he's even saying, because he's talking about it's this expansion and dissension of, like, shut the fuck up. Just talk about what's really going on here, about how rich people are taking advantage of us. Like, why all this fucking nonsense, bro? This pisses me off. Because, like, you know, because it pisses me off, of course, because there's lots of real problems out there. But instead of talking about the actual things that are fucking over working class Americans, we're talking about a bunch of fucking nonsense, like deep states and matrices.
In other places, or the shadow government by other people.
What is the deep state?
Okay, so the deep state is actually a number of things. Number one, it is the corruption of the key checks and balances portions of our government, so that the checks...
This is, again, a bunch of bullshit, bro. A bunch of bullshit. And rich people love this shit. That's why people like this get so much airtime and promotion. Nothing against Brian here. But I'm talking about in general on TV and even liberal media. Is because this fucking conspiracy driven nonsense is what keeps working class people subdued and our eyes turned off our actual class oppressors. Like, the deep state is not real. It's called capitalism. It's called the military industrial complex, Citizens United, and other policies allowing rich people to interfere in our government affairs. There needs to be an end, a law against insider trading in the government. And you would notice, I would say, neither party actually wants to take a step forward to ban insider trading because they all benefit from it. And while I'm not no idiot, I will always vote Democrat, but at the same time, some of them, like I mentioned earlier, Cinnamon and Joe Manchin, don't help. And that's what the problem is. And they don't help because, again, these corporations and wealthy people are allowed to give them campaign finances. So, yeah, like, and that's the real fucking problem. Like, why are we talking about all this fucking nonsense? Like, oh, it's the special interest of the deep cabal. Like, he hasn't said anything about class warfare this entire fucking time.
And balances portions of the government can be corrupted and therefore circumvented so that power can be centralized within the electoral bodies of our...
He's not saying anything. To a person that's and this is what frustrates me about this, because people like this sound really, because it's simpler than what he's saying. Because people like this sound really politically savvy to people who are uninformed. And people like this is why Trump winded up getting elected. Is because he sounds like he's in the know and he's fighting against the deep state and these unknown regimes of people trying to destroy America. But he's not saying anything. He's not fighting for anybody's rights. He's just pouting like a bitch over nonsense, bro. This is fucking nonsense. I'm starting to remember why this made me so mad when I listened through it at work, bro. This is a bunch of fucking bullshit. This is a bunch of fucking nonsense. This is a bunch of stuff that doesn't mean anything and doesn't hurt anyone. The dynamics in this country exist for a reason, and it's, again, not because bullshit like deep states, anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, or fucking matrices.
Let me ask you about that.
Just hold on, dude. You asked what the deep state was. Do you want to hear the answer?
I'm not done bullshit.
Because this is really important. Telling people what the deep state is very important, because we can't just call it the boogeyman, because that's essentially what a lot of these candidates
don't know
are doing.
What it
we
is.
have to articulate what it is.
So
it is these key checks and balances portions within the government that have been corrupted so they can be circumvented and power can be centralized within the electoral portions of our government. And it is those same corrupting entities that have corrupted the over 500 bureaucratic agencies that are in charge with quote-unquote regulating commerce.
And now we're speaking about deregulation so corporations can monopolize themselves. See, and so corporations can sell you fucking garbage, food products that makes you fat and gives you health problems. Deregulate so corporations can pay you as little as possible without government intervention, or where fucking corporations can make the workplace unsafe and not be liable for you getting hurt and shit like that. Like, whatever, dude. Like, deregulate these fucking nuts. Like, really.
These bureaucratic agencies are writing regulations, which is a form of law, what we can buy, what we can sell, what is legal, what is illegal. They also have their own enforcement agents for these regulations. So they have legislative writing law. They have executive enforcing their regulations, enforcing their law. And they also have their own administrative courts, which are outside of the federal.
And then this is where I come to the part where we talk about, and I'm going to move to the Black Lives Matter section after this, and I might do another section out of order if I feel like I have time, where we get to the point where y'all, and it's like, again, this is like right here literally defending corporations and business owner and selling the fucking working man out to dry. Who the fuck cares that regulations get passed on businesses? They are necessary. Y'all are the same people who will complain about certain shit, about the government being so monopolized, about monopolies and corporations doing this, that, and other, about there not being enough public ownership of things, about there not being enough public service to do certain things, but at the same time, vote against the regulation of these corporations. This reminds me of a clear-cut example is fat shaming. So I was on TikTok debating some ass wipes, And they were like, being obese is a choice. But I'm like, no. Look at our food industry. We should regulate the foods that we consume from places like McDonald's and Burger Kings and not allow them to sell this garbage to our people like they do in Japan or Sweden and other countries. You know, the McDonald's menu is different in Japan than it is here. So point being is that instead of agreeing with me, these people are like, no, we don't need to do that government regulation stuff, because these people they don't want government regulation, because people like Jake here like to see people suffer in poverty, suffer with health issues, and suffer in misery. So when it comes to things like civil rights laws, which are technically government regulations, when it comes to things about how corporations can treat you and pay you, when it comes to what corporations, dangerous bullshit they can sell you and not sell you, he just doesn't care about people, and he thinks it's funny to watch people live in squalor and poverty. And I don't even know if this guy, because he's wearing all that bullshit, he might be one of the few fascists, esoteric fascists, who are stupid enough to believe that his own piss that he's drinking. So whatever. I want to hear what his thoughts on Black Lives Matter is, because we're going to establish a middle ground here. Black Lives Matter was mostly a peaceful protest. I think about 92% of the protests were peaceful, and it only really got violent when the police set curfews and would like literally assault and beat people so they leave the premises of which they're protesting on. Ironically enough, with these curfews, if you were just a regular person out on the street going back and forth to work or picking somebody up, or you were out driving and you had nothing to do with the rioting, you'll be fine. Or the protest, you'll be fine. They won't say anything to you. They just want to break up the protest, so they set curfews. Not to mention the fact we do have situations and times where, yeah, of course, it's times where people, take it, because what happens, because the people complain, especially when they want to be racist about black people, or anybody else that was rioting and looting, but these looters had nothing to do with the civil rights protests. They were opportunists who took advantage of the fact that the police were distracted to break into stores and steal. Or at the end of the day, there's socioeconomic arguments to be made there, where if they had opportunities, they would have to go out to these stores and steal. There's also arguments to be made that these people were not necessarily a result of people protesting, because you got a bunch of people holding up signs and saying hands up, don't shoot, and the police are all surrounded and focused on them. So all the other motherfuckers who are apolitical, pretty much, who don't give I'm cussing in this video anyway, who don't give a fuck about politics and just want to have an opportunity to steal something, would, go steal or burn. Not to mention, even on top of all that, a lot of the people who burnt the 3rd precinct, who were setting fires, were people like the fucking Boogaloo Boys. So let's see where he goes with this.
Assaulted police officers deserves to be prosecuted, and that would also include all of the people that were rioting all over the United States of America, burning down businesses.
BLM has
no, and I see we're trying to falsely equivocate what happened on January 6th to Black Lives Matter protests and the riots that ensued due to the protests. Again, like, you motherfuckers went up to the Capitol, because, and let's be mask off on this, right-wing Republican white supremacist people are violent people who wanted to see if they can beat, maim, and assault their way into the Chamber of Commerce, to assault and unalive Democrats and Republicans that disagree with them, so that they could recertify Trump as president, because these racist white people and dumb fucking jigaboos dancing behind them thought that they are deserving of a certain presidency, that they are deserving of Trump being the president, because they don't want to see any socioeconomic progress for the people that they stand on top of. Let's be fucking real here. And Black Lives Matter, protests and rallies were very similar in vein to the slave rebellions and the civil rights protests from the 60s, of course, which it mirrored the most, where you have people talking about economic inequality, you have people talking about how we overfund our police programs and how a lot of that can be allocated into the neighborhood to prevent crime, how we had conversations about community policing, how we had, you know, resurrections of ideas like black gun ownership and the Black Panther Party. That's what Black Lives Matter was about, and that's what the conversations that were being had there was, not attacking the government, but protecting ourselves from, in our own welfare, from the government. You people want the government to do what you want. Y'all are the motherfuckers with your head up the government's ass and think that you're owed something from the government or the rest of the general public because you couldn't accept the fact that more people voted against Donald Trump in 2020. So, like, don't you dare insult us like we are the fascist insurrectionist traitors when you are the motherfuckers that have neo-Nazis and Proud Boys next to you.
Nothing to do with January 6th.
No. Hold on. What we're talking about here is my standards for justice. If you assault police officers, if you vandalize property.
Not to mention the fact most Black Lives Matter protesters and stuff like that, even the strongest people that were there just got arrested. And a lot of people were maimed and beaten even though they wasn't resisting arrest. Y'all did way more than resist arrest. Y'all had a unified military units of terrorists like the Proud Boys or what you call them, the 3%ers or National Social Club 131, who went into the Capitol with and the Oath Keepers, who had fire teams of people with shields, with batons, with bear spray, who purposefully confronted, assaulted, beat, and chased police officers in the Capitol. In one instance, a black police officer was called a fucking nigger. So don't give me this nonsense where we're speaking like, we, you know, the protests were like actually they were like peaceful. We were different. When you people were actively violent, you were actively trying to, you know, see how you could like hurt these cops and beat them. You know, my money's on, you know, I'm like the Simpsons meme where it's the two monkeys fighting and it's y'all two beating the fuck out of each other, by the way. I don't care who wins. Point being is that, well, I guess I did. The cops would win in this situation because hopefully at least some of them will follow the law, but they often don't. But that's a whole nother conversation. Point being is that y'all went to the Capitol in Washington, D.C. with the express purposes of organized terrorist units to fight and brutalize the police and other government officials. There was no one at Black Lives Matter protests with a fucking ski mask and handcuffs on. Nobody really, you know, only in daytime or to actually protect us, brought guns to Black Lives Matter protests. Nobody placed bombs anywhere. And all the fucking terrorism that was done during the Black Lives Matter protest was done by people like Boogaloo Boys who were trying to start a race war. So, like, I don't know.
Okay,
like,
so hold on. Then why is it that 90 to 95% of the federal charges against those rioters in 2020 have been dropped?
Can you name me one name of one person that assaulted a police officer during the BLM riots that was not prosecuted?
Yeah, dude, you can look it up. Kamala Harris was bailing him out of jail, dude.
Not true.
She wasn't. Some Democratic politicians had, because what happened is, what he needs to understand is that when people were arrested during the Black Lives Matter protest, it was for shit like violating curfew. That's why he's laughing. Again, because he knows he's full of shit and he's saying that stuff because he's a fucking racist who wants to see the civil rights of black people ceded from us. So it's funny to him when they do that little like laugh, smile, half laugh. Because Brian isn't laughing or smiling. He's laughing. That's a smile. You can see it.
What you just said is
because it's funny. He knows it. And this guy's out and about white supremacist. I'm trying to figure, do I want to do one more segment of this, or do I just want to walk away and just say, yeah. Again, well, I guess there you have it. I'm not going to do any more because I want to do other stuff today because I got a little day at home. Wife's at church. And Q Shaman, piece of shit, white supremacist, conspiracy theorist, hit up his ass moron. And what really could be more said about this guy? Like, fuck this guy and everything he stands for. I'm through.